At just 28, she was already a billionaire heiress, the only daughter of the late Chief Okoye, a business magnate whose empire stretched across oil, real estate, and international trade. She was elegant, intelligent, and admired in every elite circle from Lagos to London. And now, she was about to marry the man everyone believed was perfect for her. The ballroom shimmered like a dream carved out of gold and glass. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, their light scattering into 1,000 tiny reflections that danced across the polished marble floors. The air carried the soft scent of expensive perfume and fresh white roses, imported, of course, from somewhere far more romantic than Lagos. Everything about the night screamed perfection, and at the center of it all stood Amara Okoye. She looked every bit the billionaire bride the world had come to admire. Her gown, custom-made in Paris, flowed like liquid silk around her body, hugging her waist before cascading into a soft, elegant train. Diamonds rested delicately against her collarbone, catching the light with every movement she made. Her makeup was flawless, her smile poised, her posture regal. To the guests, she was untouchable. To the media, she was a headline. To her fiancé, she believed she was loved. "Amara, darling?" She turned just in time to be enveloped in a warm embrace from Mr. Ellison, one of her late father's closest associates. His booming laughter filled the air as he pulled back to look at her. "Your father would have been so proud tonight," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've outdone yourself." Amara smiled softly. "Thank you, Mr. Ellison. That means a lot." And it did, because nights like this were never just about celebration. They were about legacy. Her father, the late Chief Okoye, had built an empire from nothing. Oil, real estate, international investments. His name carried weight in rooms that Amara was only just beginning to fully command. Since his passing a few years ago, she had stepped into his world, determined not just to maintain his legacy, but to expand it. And tonight was supposed to mark a new chapter, a union, a partnership, a future. "Where is the lucky man?" Mr. Ellison asked, glancing around. "I must congratulate him properly before the night ends." Amara laughed lightly. "That's actually who I'm looking for." She scanned the room. Victor Kane, her fiancé, her soon-to-be husband. He should have been easy to find. He always carried himself with a presence that demanded attention. Tall, well-built, impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, Victor had a way of commanding rooms without even trying. It was one of the things she had admired about him. "First, I'll find him," she said, excusing herself gently. As she moved through the crowd, guests greeted her with admiration, envy, and curiosity. "Amara, congratulations! You look stunning. We're so happy for you." She smiled, nodded, thanked them all, but her eyes were searching. Where was he? She spotted his business partner near the bar. "Victor?" she asked. The man shook his head. "Saw him a few minutes ago. I think he stepped out." Amara frowned slightly. Stepped out? On a night like this? That wasn't like him. A small flicker of unease stirred in her chest, but she brushed it aside. He was probably handling something important. He always was. Still, something nudged her forward. Instead of returning to the main hall, she turned toward the quieter wing of the venue, the private corridors reserved for VIP guests and staff. The noise of the ballroom faded behind her. Laughter turned into muffled echoes. Music softened into a distant hum. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she walked, the sound sharp in the growing silence. "Victor?" she called lightly. No response. She moved further down the corridor, passing closed doors and dim wall sconces, casting warm pools of light along the hallway. And then she heard it. His voice, low, sharp, unmistakable. Amara slowed. Her heart gave a small, strange flutter. He sounded different, not the charming, polished man she knew. This voice was colder, harder. "I'm telling you, everything is already in motion." Amara froze just before the corner. There was another voice, too, male, unfamiliar. "You're sure she won't suspect anything?" the man asked. A soft chuckle followed, Victor's chuckle, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't affectionate. It sent a chill down her spine. "Amara," he said, almost mockingly, "she trusts me completely." The words hit her like a sudden drop. She stayed still, hidden, listening. "Once we're married," Victor continued, "everything transfers smoothly. The shares, the estate, the offshore accounts. Her father set it all up in a way that makes her husband the primary authority after marriage." The other man whistled low. "That's a lot of power." "It's more than power," Victor replied. "It's control." Amara's fingers tightened around the small clutch in her hand. No, she must be misunderstanding. This couldn't be what it sounded like. "She won't even realize what she's signing," Victor added casually. "I've already had the documents adjusted. By the time she notices anything, if she ever does, it'll be too late." Amara felt the ground shift beneath her. Her breath became shallow. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to pretend she hadn't heard, to protect the version of him she believed in. But she couldn't move. "And if she refuses?" the other man asked. There was a pause, a heavy one. Then Victor spoke again, and this time there was no trace of the man she thought she loved. "Then she won't have a choice." The cold finality in his tone shattered something deep inside her. Silence followed, but inside Amara, everything was screaming. Memories flashed through her mind. Every smile, every promise, every moment she had trusted him. Every word now twisted into something ugly, a lie, a calculated performance. Her stomach turned. Slowly, carefully, she took a step back. Then another. Her heels suddenly felt too loud, too dangerous against the floor, so she slipped them off, holding them in her hand as she moved silently away from the corridor. She didn't run. Not yet. She couldn't, because if she ran, it would make it real, and she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. She reached the main hall again. The music was still playing. Guests were still laughing. Glasses still clinked. The world hadn't changed, but hers had. Completely. Someone approached her, smiling, congratulating her, but she barely registered their words. Her ears rang. Her chest felt tight. Her vision blurred at the edges. She spotted Victor moments later, emerging from the hallway as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just destroyed everything. He looked composed, confident, perfect. His eyes found hers across the room, and he smiled, that same charming smile that had once made her heart skip. Now it made her feel sick. He walked toward her, adjusting his cufflinks. "Amara," he said warmly, reaching for her hand, "I've been looking for you." She stared at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, she saw a stranger. "You disappeared," he added lightly. "Everything okay?" "Everything okay." The words echoed in her mind like a cruel joke. For a brief second, she considered confronting him right there, dragging the truth into the open, letting the world see who he really was. But something stopped her. Instinct, strategy, survival. Victor wasn't just a liar, he was dangerous. And men like that didn't fall easily. So instead, she smiled, soft, controlled, perfect, just like he expected. "I'm fine," she said calmly. And in that moment, Amara Okoye made a decision that would change everything. She would not marry this man, but she would not let him know she knew, not yet. Because walking away from Victor Kane wouldn't be simple. It would be a battle, and she intended to win. As the music swelled and the night carried on around them, Amara stood beside her fiancé, her hand resting lightly in his, while silently planning his downfall. The perfect illusion was still intact, but beneath it, war had already begun. Lagos did not sleep that night, not really, because by dawn the story had already broken. It started as a whisper among event staff, then slipped into the circles of the elite guests who had attended the engagement party. By sunrise, it had reached bloggers. By mid-morning, it was everywhere. Billionaire Heiress calls off wedding hours before ceremony. Amara Okoye vanishes without explanation. Society wedding of the year ends in mystery. Phones buzzed across the city, group chats exploded, News anchors tried and failed to sound composed as they delivered updates with barely concealed excitement. But inside the Okoye estate, there was only silence. Amara stood in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of her bedroom, staring out at the manicured gardens below. The morning sun stretched across the lawn, bathing everything in soft gold. It was peaceful, too peaceful, as if the world outside hadn't just tilted off its axis. She hadn't slept, not even for a second. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his voice again. "Once we're married, everything becomes mine." Her chest tightened. She wrapped her arms around herself, as though trying to hold together something that was threatening to fall apart from the inside. A soft knock came at the door. "Madam," her house manager, Mrs. Whitaker, called gently. "Are you awake?" Amara inhaled slowly. "Yes." The door opened slightly, and the older woman stepped in, her face lined with concern. "They're here," she said quietly. Amara frowned. "Who?" Mrs. Whitaker hesitated. "The press and some of the guests from last night. They're asking questions." Of course they were. Amara let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Let them ask. But what should we tell them?" Amara turned back to the window. "Nothing." The word hung heavy in the air. Mrs. Whitaker studied her carefully. "Are you all right?" Amara paused. Was she? Her entire future had collapsed in a single conversation. The man she was supposed to marry had been planning to ruin her, to trap her, to take everything her father had built, and she had almost let him. "I will be," she said finally. And for the first time since the previous night, her voice carried something new. Not just pain, but resolve. By noon, the city was in a frenzy. At the gates of the Okoye estate, reporters gathered like vultures circling something wounded. "Miss Okoye, is the wedding canceled? Was there a disagreement? Did Mr. Kane call it off? Are the rumors about a scandal true?" Security held them back, but it didn't stop the shouting. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, but Amara gave them nothing. No statement, no appearance, no explanation. She disappeared. Across the city, in a sleek high-rise overlooking Victoria Island, Victor Kane was not as calm as he appeared. His penthouse was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every detail carefully curated to reflect power and control. But right now, control was slipping. The television in front of him played the same headline on repeat. "Wedding called off. Amara Okoye missing." His jaw tightened. "Turn it off," he snapped. His assistant quickly obeyed, the room falling into tense silence. Victor stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Something wasn't right. Amara wouldn't just cancel the wedding without a reason. Not after everything, not after how close they were to finalizing the legal arrangements. Unless... His eyes darkened. Unless she knew. The thought settled heavily in his chest. No, that was impossible. He had been careful, meticulous. There was no way she could have found out. And yet, he pulled out his phone and dialed her number. It rang, and then voicemail. His grip tightened. He tried again, same result. By the third attempt, his calm facade cracked. "Find out where she is," he said coldly, turning to his assistant. "Now." Miles away, in a quiet corner of the city, someone else was watching the news with a very different reaction. Declan Hayes leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the screen. He hadn't planned to pay much attention to society gossip. Not anymore. He had outgrown that world, or at least he liked to think he had. But when he saw her face, everything else faded. Amara Okoye. Even after all these years, he recognized her instantly. She looked the same, and not the same at all. Cool. Still beautiful, still composed, but there was something in her eyes in those photos from the night before. Something off. Something he couldn't ignore. He muted the television, his mind already racing. The Amara he knew from university in London wasn't impulsive. She didn't make dramatic decisions without reason. If she had called off her wedding, there was a reason, and it wasn't something small. Declan stood, grabbing his jacket. He hadn't seen her in years. Life had taken them in different directions, but some connections didn't just disappear. and something in his gut told him she wasn't okay. Back at the Okoye estate, the gates finally closed to the outside world. Strict instructions had been given. No visitors, no calls, no access. Amara sat in her father's old study, surrounded by dark wood shelves filled with books and memories. This room had always been his sanctuary. Now it felt like the only place she could breathe. On the desk in front of her lay a stack of documents, contracts, agreements, legal drafts for the marriage. She stared at them, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she picked up one of the files and flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the pages, and then she saw it. The clause, subtle, carefully worded, easy to overlook, but devastating in its implications. Her stomach dropped. "He really thought I wouldn't notice," she murmured. Or worse, that she wouldn't understand. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, the door opened. Her cousin Serena rushed in, her face flushed with urgency. "Amara, what is going on?" she demanded. "The entire city is talking about you." Amara didn't look up. "Let them talk." Serena blinked. "You canceled your wedding to Victor. Do you even understand what this looks like?" Amara finally lifted her gaze, and the look in her eyes made Serena pause. "This isn't about how it looks," Amara said quietly. "Then what is it about?" Silence stretched between them. Then Amara closed the file gently. "It's about survival." Serena frowned. "What are you talking about?" Amara held her gaze, and for the first time, she let someone else see the truth. By evening, whispers had turned into speculation. Speculation into rumors, rumors into theories. Some said Amara had gotten cold feet. Others claimed there was another man, a scandal, a betrayal. But no one knew the truth. Not yet. And that was exactly how Amara wanted it, because while the world searched for answers, she was preparing, carefully, strategically, silently. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Amara stood alone on her balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly before her. Lagos, alive, unforgiving, beautiful, dangerous, just like the man she had almost married. She gripped the railing, her thoughts heavy. This wasn't over, not even close. If Victor suspected anything, he wouldn't let her go easily, and if he didn't suspect, he would soon. Either way, a storm was coming, and this time, she wouldn't be the one caught unprepared. Behind her, her phone buzzed softly on the table. She turned, frowning slightly. No one was supposed to be able to reach her. Slowly, she walked over and picked it up. An unknown number. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she answered. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a familiar voice spoke, calm, steady, unexpected. "Amara." Her breath caught. She hadn't heard that voice in years. "Declan." A soft exhale came from the other end. "Yeah," he said. "It's me." Silence followed, heavy, loaded with history. "I saw the news," he continued, "and I knew something wasn't right." Amara swallowed. Of all the people in the world, why him? "Are you okay?" he asked. The question was simple, but it broke something open inside her. Because for the first time since everything happened, someone wasn't asking out of curiosity or gossip or judgment. They were asking because they cared. Amara closed her eyes briefly, then answered honestly. "No." Another pause. Then Declan said quietly, "Good. Then I'm coming over." Her eyes flew open. "What? No, Declan, you can't just—" "I can," he interrupted gently, "and I will." There was something in his voice, not forceful, not overbearing, just certain. "I'm not letting you go through whatever this is alone," he added. Amara's heart tightened. She didn't know whether to protest again or to let him, because deep down, she knew the battle ahead of her was bigger than she could handle alone. And maybe, just maybe, Declan Hayes had just walked back into her life at exactly the right time. As she lowered the phone slowly, one thought echoed in her mind. The world thought she had disappeared, but in truth, Amara Okoye was just beginning to fight back. The night felt different, quieter, heavier, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Amara stood in the grand foyer of the Okoye estate, her arms loosely folded across her chest, her bare feet pressing against the cool marble floor. The house, usually alive with movement, voices, and subtle activity, felt almost too still. Everyone had been dismissed early, extra security had been stationed at the gates, and yet, despite all of it, she didn't feel entirely safe. Not anymore. Her phone call with Declan still echoed in her mind. "I'm coming over." It had sounded so simple, so certain, like nothing had changed, but everything had. She hadn't seen him in years, not since London, not since the version of herself that had been lighter, less guarded, less aware of how cruel the world could be. A soft buzz came from the security panel by the door. Her gaze snapped toward it. "He's here, madam." One of the guards announced through the intercom. Her heart skipped. For a moment, she hesitated. This was real. He was really here. Slowly, she nodded. Even though he couldn't see her, Amara pressed the button. "Let him in." The gates opened with a low, mechanical hum. Outside, a sleek black car rolled slowly into the compound, its headlights cutting through the darkness before dimming as it came to a stop. Amara watched from the doorway as the driver's side opened, and then he stepped out. Declan Hayes. For a second, time blurred, yet somehow he looked exactly like she remembered, and completely different. He was taller than she recalled, or maybe he just carried himself differently now. Broader shoulders, sharper edges, dressed simply, but with an effortless confidence that didn't need to announce itself. His face had matured, the softness of youth replaced with something steadier, stronger. But his eyes, those hadn't changed. Still observant, still calm, still the kind that seemed to see more than most people noticed. He glanced up, and their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, history, something deeper that neither of them immediately named. Amara realized she hadn't moved, hadn't breathed, hadn't prepared for this moment at all. So she did the only thing she could. She stepped forward. The door opened before he could knock. Declan paused slightly when he saw her up close, and for the first time since arriving, he looked unsure. "Hi," he said. It was simple, soft, almost out of place after everything that had happened. Amara let out a small breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Hi." For a moment, they just stood there, two people who used to know each other, trying to figure out where they stood now. Then Declan's gaze shifted slightly, scanning her face more carefully. "You look," he started, then stopped himself. Amara raised an eyebrow faintly. "Like someone who just canceled her wedding?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "Yeah," he said, "something like that." The tension eased just a little. She stepped aside. "Come in." They moved into the sitting room. Soft lighting, muted tones, everything elegant, controlled, composed. Just like her. Declan took it in briefly, but his attention kept returning to her. Not the room, not the wealth. Her. Amara sat first, crossing her legs carefully, her posture straight. But there was a subtle tightness in her shoulders that didn't go unnoticed. Declan sat across from her, leaning forward slightly, his forearms resting on his knees. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, "You always did disappear when things got hard," he said quietly. The words weren't accusing. They were familiar. Amara let out a soft, almost surprised laugh. "And you always found me," she replied. That did something, shifted something, because suddenly they weren't strangers trying to catch up. They were two people stepping back into a rhythm they had once known. London came back in flashes. Rain against library windows, late-night study sessions, arguments over nothing, laughter over everything. Declan, sitting across from her with books scattered everywhere, pretending not to watch her when she wasn't looking. Amara pretending not to notice. Back then, life had been simpler, or maybe they had just been younger. Declan leaned back slightly, studying her. "All right," he said gently. "Tell me what really happened." The softness in his voice was deceptive, because underneath it was something steady, unshakable. Amara's gaze dropped briefly to her hands. This was the part she hadn't prepared for. Telling someone. Making it real. I overheard him, she said finally. Declan didn't interrupt, didn't rush her, so she continued. The night before at the party, I was looking for him and, she paused, her jaw tightening slightly. I heard him talking. Her voice grew quieter, colder. About me. Declan's expression didn't change, but his focus sharpened. What did he say? Amara let out a slow breath. That once we were married, everything would become his. The room seemed to still. The company shares, my father's estate, my accounts, everything. Declan's hands curled slightly, but he remained silent, encouraging her to keep going. He said I wouldn't even understand the documents I was signing, she added, her voice tinged with something bitter now, that by the time I noticed it would be too late. Declan's jaw tightened, but still he said nothing, and that was what made it easier for her to continue. And when his friend asked what would happen if I refused, she swallowed, her voice dropping even further. He said I wouldn't have a choice. Silence. Heavy, thick, dangerous. Declan leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose. For a brief moment something dark flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, not confusion, anger, controlled, but very real. That's why you left, he said. It wasn't a question. Amara nodded. I couldn't stay, she said simply. I couldn't pretend I didn't hear it. Declan studied her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Good. She blinked. What? You left, he repeated. That was the right move. There was no hesitation in his tone, no doubt, just certainty. And something about that, about someone saying she had done the right thing, made her chest feel lighter, just a little. But it's not over, she added. Declan's gaze sharpened again. No, he agreed. It's not. Amara stood, walking toward the large window, her arms wrapping around herself again. He's not the kind of man who just lets something like this go, she said. Not after everything he was about to gain. Declan rose as well, but he didn't crowd her, didn't invade her space. He simply stood nearby, close enough to be present, far enough to let her breathe. Then we don't let him control what happens next, he said. Amara turned to look at him. We? She echoed. Declan met her gaze evenly. You think I came all this way just to listen and leave? There it was again, that quiet certainty, that refusal to step back. You don't have to do this alone, Amara. The words landed deeper than she expected, because for the past day she had felt exactly that. Alone, even in a house full of people, even surrounded by security, even with all her power. But now, standing here with someone who knew her before the money, before the expectations, before everything, she felt something else. Support, real support. You always did this, she said softly. Declan tilted his head slightly. Did what? Show up, she replied. A faint smile touched his lips. Someone had to. She shook her head lightly, but there was warmth in her eyes now, a softness that hadn't been there before. Why? She asked suddenly. Declan stilled. Why what? Why are you really here, Declan? The question hung between them, raw, honest, dangerous, because this wasn't about the wedding anymore, or Victor, or even the threat. This was about them. Declan held her gaze, and for a moment he considered giving her a simple answer, something safe, something easy. But instead, he told the truth. Because I never stopped caring about you. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Amara's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Not now, not like this, not when everything else was already so complicated. Declan, I'm not asking for anything, he added quickly, his tone steady. I'm not here to complicate things. He paused, then finished softly. I couldn't ignore it when I saw you needed help. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else, something fragile, something real. Amara looked at him for a long moment, really looked, and suddenly she saw it. Not just the man standing in front of her now, but the boy he used to be, the one who stayed late to help her study, the one who remembered the small things, the one who never asked for more than she was willing to give. And somehow he had grown into a man who still carried all of that, just stronger, steadier, unshaken. "You've changed," she said quietly. Declan gave a small shrug. "So have you." A faint smile touched her lips. "Not entirely." "No," he agreed, "not entirely." Outside, the night stretched on, but inside that room, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. Because for the first time since everything fell apart, Amara didn't feel like she was standing on the edge of something alone. And for Declan, walking back into her life didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like something that had been waiting to happen. "Okay," Amara said finally, straightening slightly. Declan raised an eyebrow. "Okay," she nodded. "If this is a fight, then we do it properly." A slow smile spread across his face. "Now that," he said, "sounds like the Amara I remember." Her eyes glinted faintly, stronger now, sharper. "Then you'd better keep up." Declan chuckled softly. "I plan to." And as they stood there, side by side, facing whatever was coming next, neither of them said it out loud. But they both knew this wasn't just the beginning of a battle. It was the beginning of something else, too. Something neither of them had expected, but neither of them were ready to walk away from. Morning came too quickly. For the first time in days, Amara had slept. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough to quiet the storm in her mind, if only for a few hours. When she opened her eyes, sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of her bedroom, soft and golden, almost deceptive in its calmness. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to forget. Then reality settled back in. Victor. The conversation, the canceled wedding, the war she had unknowingly stepped into, and Declan. Her gaze shifted slightly to the armchair near the window. Empty. A small, unexpected part of her tightened. He had stayed late into the night, going over details, asking careful questions, mapping out possibilities. At some point, exhaustion must have pulled her under, and he had left quietly, just like he used to, never making a show of his presence, never demanding attention, just there when it mattered. Amara sat up slowly, brushing her fingers against her temple. Today would be different. She could feel it. By the time she stepped into her study, fully dressed and composed, the house was already in motion. Staff moved with quiet efficiency. Security had doubled, and waiting for her was Declan. He stood near the large wooden desk, sleeves rolled up slightly, a tablet in his hand, his attention fixed on the screen. He looked up the moment she entered. "Morning?" There was something grounding about the way he said it. Simple, normal, like everything else wasn't hanging by a thread. "Morning," she replied, walking in. "You left." Declan gave a faint smile. "You were asleep. I didn't think waking you up to say goodbye would earn me any points." A small breath of amusement escaped her. "You came back." "I said I would." Again, that certainty. Amara moved to the desk. "What do you have?" Declan's expression shifted instantly, focused, sharp. "The first signs of pressure," he said. Her stomach tightened. "Already?" He turned the tablet toward her. 3 of your major partners pulled out this morning," he explained. "Oil distribution contracts in Port Harcourt, a logistics deal in Abuja, and this one's interesting. A foreign investor who's been with your family for over a decade." Amara's eyes narrowed as she scanned the details. "These deals don't just collapse overnight," she said. "They don't," Declan agreed, "unless someone pushes them." She looked up at him. "Victor." Declan didn't hesitate. "Victor." Silence settled between them, not surprised, not shocked, just confirmed. "He's moving faster than I expected," Amara murmured. Declan leaned slightly against the desk. "No," he said calmly. "He's moving exactly as expected." Her gaze sharpened. "Explain." "If he believes you don't know anything," Declan said, "then this is just pressure, a warning, something to make you uncertain, to push you back toward him." "And if he suspects I know?" Declan's eyes darkened slightly. "Then this is just the beginning." Amara straightened slowly. Her mind was already shifting, calculating, adjusting. "All right," she said. "Let's assume he suspects." Declan watched her carefully. "You're not panicking." It wasn't a question. Amara met his gaze evenly. "I don't have that luxury." A faint flicker of approval crossed his face. Good. She turned back to the tablet, her fingers tapping lightly against the edge. Which of these partners are most vulnerable to influence? She asked. Declan didn't miss a beat. The Abuja deal, he said. They've been trying to expand aggressively, easy to pressure financially. And the others? More complicated, he replied, but not untouchable. Amara nodded slowly. Then we don't chase all of them at once. Declan raised an eyebrow slightly. You're prioritizing. I'm surviving, she corrected. She looked up again, her expression sharper now. We stabilize the weakest link first. If we can reverse even one withdrawal, it sends a message. To him? Declan asked. To everyone. An hour later, the study had transformed into a war room. Documents spread across the desk, screens lit up with financial reports, calls being made, strategies forming. Amara stood at the center of it all, calm, precise, controlled. Declan watched her as she worked, and for a brief moment he wasn't thinking about Victor, or the attack, or the looming threat. He was thinking about her because this was who she really was. Not the woman in the ballroom, not the bride, but this. Sharp, focused, unshakable. You've done this before, he said quietly. Amara didn't look up. What? Handled pressure like this. She paused briefly, then continued flipping through a file. My father didn't raise me to fall apart when things get difficult. There was something in her tone, not pride, not arrogance, just truth. The first call came through just after noon. Amara answered it herself. Mr. Bello, she said smoothly, I was expecting your call. Declan watched her closely as she listened. Her expression didn't change, didn't crack, but he could tell this mattered. After a few moments, she spoke again. I understand your concerns, she said calmly, but I think you're making a decision based on incomplete information. Pause. Then, no, I'm not asking you to reconsider blindly. I'm offering you clarity. Another pause. Amara's gaze flickered briefly toward Declan, then back to the call. Give me 24 hours, she said. If I can't address your concerns by then, you walk away. No resistance. Declan's brow lifted slightly. Bold, very bold. Amara listened again. Then, good, she said simply, and ended the call. Well? Declan asked. He's hesitating, Amara replied. That's not the same as staying. No, she agreed, but it's not leaving either. Declan nodded slowly. You bought time. I always do. But time, as it turned out, was exactly what Victor didn't intend to give her, because by evening the situation escalated. Amara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for a moment, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then a familiar voice, smooth, controlled, dangerous. Amara. Her entire body went still. Victor. Declan looked up immediately, reading her expression. Hello, Victor, she said, her voice steady. You've been avoiding me. I've been busy. A soft chuckle came through the line. Canceling weddings tends to do that. Amara didn't respond. She wouldn't give him the reaction he wanted. I must admit, he continued, I didn't expect you to run. I didn't run. No, he said lightly. Then what would you call it? Amara's grip on the phone tightened slightly. Self-preservation. Pause. Then, that sounds dramatic. Her eyes hardened. And your behavior wasn't? Silence. Brief. Sharp. Then his tone shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. You heard something, didn't you? There it was, the question hanging between them. Dangerous. Amara exhaled slowly. This was the moment, the line she had to walk carefully. I heard enough, she said. Another pause, longer this time. When Victor spoke again, the warmth was gone. I see. Declan stepped closer, his presence solid beside her, not interrupting, just there. You've made a mistake, Amara, Victor said quietly. No, she replied. I corrected one. A soft, humorless laugh came through. You think you can just walk away from me? I already have. That's not how this works, her jaw tightened. I'm not yours to control. No, he said slowly, "but everything you own is." The threat landed exactly as intended. Cold, calculated, precise. Amara didn't flinch. "You're already trying," she said. "It's not working." "Not yet," Victor admitted. "But it will." Declan's expression darkened beside her. "You underestimate me," Amara replied. "No," Victor said softly. "I think I underestimated how emotional you'd be." Her eyes flashed. "This isn't emotion." "No?" he said. "Then what is it?" Amara's voice dropped. Steel. Strategy. Silence. Then a shift. Something colder, more dangerous. "Be careful, Amara," Victor said quietly. "You're stepping into something you don't fully understand." She didn't hesitate. "No," she said. "You are." And she ended the call. The room fell into silence. Heavy. Charged. Declan exhaled slowly. "Well," he said, "that confirms it." "He knows," Amara replied, "and he's not backing down." "Neither am I." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Declan spoke again. "We need to tighten security." "It's already tight." "Not enough," he said. "Not for someone like him." Amara studied him. "You think he'll escalate?" Declan met her gaze. "I think he already has." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky darkened, and somewhere in the city, Victor Kane stood by his window. His phone still in his hand, his expression unreadable. But his eyes burned with something dangerous, because this was no longer about marriage, or wealth, or control. This had become something else, something personal. Back at the estate, Amara stood beside the window once more, the city lights flickering in the distance. Her reflection stared back at her. Not the bride, not the victim, but something stronger, something sharper. Beside her, Declan stood quietly, watching, waiting, ready. And as the night settled in, one truth became clear. The first strike had been made. But the real war was just beginning. The first message came in the early hours. Amara was awake. She hadn't meant to be. Sleep had become something fragile, something that slipped through her fingers the moment her mind slowed down enough to remember everything waiting for her when she opened her eyes again. So she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant, almost comforting presence of security patrols outside. Her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. She frowned. No one was supposed to contact her directly at this hour. Slowly she reached for it. Unknown number. For a moment she considered ignoring it. Then instinct pushed her otherwise. She opened the message. "You should have married me." Amara's chest tightened. The words sat on the screen. Simple, direct, and heavy with implication. She didn't need to ask who it was. She already knew. Victor. Her grip on the phone tightened, but her face remained composed. She stared at the message for a few seconds longer. Then calmly, she deleted it. No response, no reaction, nothing. Because if there was one thing she understood now, it was this. Men like Victor thrived on attention, on fear, on control, and she would give him none of it. By morning, the tension had settled deeper into the walls of the estate. Security had increased again, new faces, stricter protocols, every gate double-checked, every entry locked, every movement monitored. It felt less like a home now and more like a fortress. Amara sat at the breakfast table, untouched food in front of her, her attention fixed on the tablet in her hands. More updates, more pressure. 2 more minor partners had withdrawn overnight. A shipment had been delayed without explanation, and one of her senior managers had suddenly resigned. She exhaled slowly. Efficient. Calculated. Victor wasn't just attacking randomly, he was dismantling her piece by piece. "You're going to starve at this rate." Declan's voice broke through her thoughts. She looked up. He stood at the entrance of the dining area, dressed simply. His sleeves rolled again, his presence as steady as ever. "I've eaten," she said. Declan glanced at the untouched plate. "Sure you have." A small flicker of annoyance crossed her face, but it faded quickly. "Not hungry," she admitted. Declan walked in, pulling out the chair across from her and sitting down. Then eat anyway. She raised an eyebrow. Is that an order? No, he said calmly. It's common sense. For a moment she stared at him, then, unexpectedly, she picked up her fork. Declan nodded, satisfied. You got the message, he said after a moment. Amara paused mid-motion. You're assuming. I'm observing, he corrected. She sighed softly, setting the fork down again. Yes, she said. I got it. What did it say? She hesitated, then repeated it. You should have married me. Declan's jaw tightened slightly. Classic intimidation tactic, he said. It's more than that, Amara replied quietly. It's possession. Declan's gaze sharpened, and he just lost it. As if on cue, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time she didn't hesitate. She opened it. You belong to me. A cold wave slid down her spine. Declan noticed the shift instantly. What? She turned the phone toward him. His expression darkened. He's escalating, he said. Amara swallowed, but her voice remained steady. Good. Declan looked at her sharply. Good? Yes, she said. Because now he's not pretending anymore. There was a dangerous calm in her tone, the kind that came from understanding exactly what you were facing. And when people stop pretending, she added, they make mistakes. But even as she said it, the unease lingered, because this wasn't just strategy anymore. This was personal. And personal meant unpredictable. By midday, the estate had become a controlled storm. Meetings, calls, adjustments. Amara moved through it all with precision, her voice calm, her decisions sharp. But underneath it, the pressure was building. Declan watched it carefully. She wasn't breaking. Not even close, but she was carrying too much, and he knew it. Take a break. The words came out of nowhere. Amara didn't look up from the document in her hand. I don't have time for breaks. You don't have time not to. That made her pause. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to him. Excuse me? Declan stepped closer, his tone still calm, but firmer now. You've been going non-stop since this started, he said. You're not thinking clearly anymore. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I'm thinking just fine. No, he said quietly. You're reacting. The words hit, harder than she expected. I don't react, she said. Declan held her gaze. Everyone does, he replied. The difference is whether you realize it. Silence, tense, sharp. Then Amara exhaled slowly, leaning back slightly. For a moment she said nothing. Then, 5 minutes, she said. Declan nodded. I'll take it. They stepped outside. The garden stretched wide and green, the air fresher than the tension inside. For a few minutes they walked in silence, not awkward, not forced, just quiet. Amara closed her eyes briefly, letting the breeze brush against her skin. I hate this, she said suddenly. Declan glanced at her. The situation? No, she replied. The feeling. He didn't ask her to explain, so she did. I hate feeling watched, she said, controlled, like I'm constantly reacting to something I can't fully see. Declan's expression softened slightly. That's what he wants. I know. Then don't give it to him. She stopped walking, turned to face him. And how exactly do I do that? She asked. Declan stepped closer, not too close, just enough. You stay ahead of him, he said. You think bigger than him. Her eyes searched his. And if I can't? Declan didn't hesitate. Then I'll help you. The words settled between them, simple but solid. Amara held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded slightly. Okay. The peace didn't last. It never did. By evening, things escalated again, this time physically. Amara's convoy was returning from a brief, tightly controlled visit to one of her company offices. Security had insisted on the trip being short, direct, safe. Everything had been planned carefully. Everything had been checked. Everything had been controlled, and still it happened. The first sign was subtle. A car behind them, too close, too consistent. Amara noticed it first. "Is that car supposed to be there?" she asked quietly. The driver glanced in the mirror. "No, madam." Declan's body tensed beside her. "Stay alert," he said calmly. The atmosphere inside the car shifted instantly. Focused, sharp, dangerous. The car behind them didn't fall back, didn't change lanes, didn't hesitate. Then another car appeared from the side, blocking. "Move," Declan said sharply. The driver accelerated, but it was too late. The road narrowed. The second car cut in, and suddenly they were boxed in. Everything happened at once. A loud bang, gunfire, glass cracking, screams from the security vehicle behind them. "Get down!" Declan shouted, pulling Amara toward him. Her heart slammed violently against her chest as chaos erupted around them. Shots rang out. Metal screeched. The car swerved violently. Amara's world blurred into noise and motion and fear. Real fear, not the controlled kind, not the calculated kind, but raw, immediate, deadly. Declan's arm tightened around her as he forced her lower. "Stay down," he repeated. The driver tried to break through. Another shot. The windshield cracked. "Reverse! Reverse!" someone shouted through the comms. The car jerked backward, then forward again, breaking through just enough space. And suddenly they were moving. Fast. Escaping. The sound of gunfire faded behind them, but the silence that followed was worse. No one spoke for several seconds. No one moved. Then, "Are you hurt?" Declan asked quickly, his hands already checking her arms, her shoulders, her face. "I'm fine," she said, her voice shaking slightly despite her effort to steady it. "You're sure?" "Yes." He exhaled, relief brief but real. They reached the estate within minutes. Security rushed forward, voices overlapping, questions flying. But Amara barely heard any of it, because her mind was still there. In the car, in the moment, in the realization that had just become impossible to ignore. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was war. Inside the house, everything shifted again. Faster, sharper, more urgent. Declan stood in front of her, his expression darker than she had ever seen it. "That wasn't a warning," he said. Amara nodded slowly. "I know. That was an attempt. I know." Silence, heavy. Then she lifted her chin slightly, her eyes steady, stronger now, colder, more resolved. "Then we stop reacting," she said. Declan watched her closely. "And start ending this." A slow, dangerous understanding passed between them, because whatever this had been before, it had just crossed a line, and there was no going back from it. That night, as the estate locked down tighter than ever before, as security doubled again, as the city outside carried on, unaware of how close something had come to breaking, Amara stood by her window once more. But she wasn't afraid, not anymore, because fear had changed, evolved, hardened into something else, something sharper, something stronger, something dangerous. Behind her, Declan stood quietly, watching, present, unmoving. And as their reflections merged faintly in the glass, one truth became clear. Victor had made a mistake because he hadn't just threatened her life. He had given her a reason to destroy him completely. The estate no longer felt like a home. It felt like a command center. Every entrance was guarded, every movement tracked, every conversation deliberate. What had once been a sanctuary for Amara was now a place of strategy, tension, and controlled silence. And at the center of it, the truth was unfolding. It started just before dawn. Declan hadn't slept, not properly. He sat in the study, the glow of multiple screens reflecting in his eyes, files spread across the desk, connections forming piece by piece in his mind. Names, accounts, transactions, patterns. At first glance, Victor Kane had been clean, carefully so. His public records were spotless. Successful businessman, strategic investor, philanthropist, the kind of man society admired and trusted. But Declan had never believed in surface appearances, and now he was proving exactly why. A soft knock broke the silence. Amara stepped in. She had changed, not physically, but something about her presence felt sharper now, more deliberate, more aware. She glanced at the screens, then at Declan. You've been here all night. Declan didn't deny it. I found something. That was all it took. Amara stepped closer immediately. What? Declan turned one of the screens toward her. Your fiancé, he said calmly, is not who he claims to be. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes, they hardened. Show me. Declan tapped the screen, pulling up a series of transactions. At first, it looked like normal business movement, he explained. Layered investments, offshore accounts, asset redistribution. Amara leaned slightly closer, her focus sharp. And then? And then I stopped looking at what was visible, he said, and started looking at what wasn't. He opened another file. These accounts, he continued, pointing, are tied to shell companies. No real operations, no physical offices, just money moving in and out. Amara's brows drew together. Money for what? Declan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened another document. Emails, encrypted, recovered. And as Amara's eyes scanned the screen, her stomach dropped. This, she whispered, is blackmail, Declan said. The room felt colder. He let her process it, didn't rush her, didn't interrupt, because this wasn't just information. This was the man she almost married. They're paying him, she said slowly. Some of them, Declan replied. Others, he's paying. For what? Declan's jaw tightened slightly. Control. Amara looked up at him. What kind of control? Declan held her gaze. The kind that ruins people if they don't comply. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then there's more, Declan added. Amara didn't hesitate. Show me. The next file hit harder, because this time it wasn't numbers. It was names. People. Real people. Business executives. Politicians. Partners. Some she recognized, some she didn't, but all of them connected, cross-referenced. Every one of them has had some kind of incident, Declan said quietly. Amara's eyes scanned faster now. Resignations, scandals, sudden bankruptcies, disappearances from public life. Her chest tightened. You're saying he did this? I'm saying, Declan replied carefully, that every person who refused to align with him lost everything. Amara stepped back slightly, her mind racing. No, she said softly, that's not just business. Declan shook his head. No, he agreed, it's not. For a moment, neither of them spoke, because the realization settling between them was far worse than anything they had expected. He wasn't trying to marry me, Amara said finally. Declan watched her. No, she continued, her voice quieter now. He was trying to acquire me. The words hung in the air, cold, precise, true. Declan leaned back slightly, studying her. You weren't just avoiding a bad marriage, he said. Amara met his gaze. I was escaping a system. And just like that, everything changed, but Declan wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said. Amara exhaled slowly. Of course there is. He hesitated this time, just briefly, and that alone told her this part was worse. What is it? She asked. Declan turned the screen again. Security footage. Grainy. A warehouse. A meeting. Victor and men who did not look like businessmen. Amara's breath caught. Who are they? Declan's voice was steady, but darker now. Enforcers. The word landed heavily. What kind of enforcers? She pressed. Declan didn't soften it. The kind that make problems disappear. Amara felt something inside her shift. Not fear. Not exactly. Something deeper. Something colder. Because this confirmed it. Victor wasn't just manipulative. He wasn't just greedy. He was dangerous on a level she hadn't fully grasped before. And the attack yesterday? She asked quietly. Declan held her gaze. I don't think it was random. Silence. Then, you think he ordered it? I think, Declan said carefully, that he didn't expect you to survive it. Amara closed her eyes briefly, and in that moment everything became clear. The messages, the pressure, the business attacks, the physical attack. It wasn't escalation. It was a plan, a controlled descent designed to break her or remove her. She was never supposed to walk away. Declan's earlier words echoed in her mind. Now they felt heavier, more real. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed. "So what do we do?" she asked. No hesitation, no fear, just focus. Declan didn't answer immediately because the truth was, this wasn't simple anymore. This wasn't just about protecting her assets or stabilizing her company. This was about survival and justice and strategy on a completely different level. "We expose him," Declan said finally. Amara's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not enough." "No," he agreed. "It's not." She stepped closer, her voice lower now, sharper. "Because men like him don't fall from exposure alone," she said. "They adapt." Declan nodded slowly. "They do." "Then we don't just expose him," she said. Declan's gaze locked onto hers. "What are you suggesting?" Amara didn't look away. "We dismantle him." The words settled between them. Not emotional. Not reactive. Strategic. Declan studied her for a long moment, then a slow, approving nod. "All right," he said. But even as the plan began to form, even as the pieces started to align, there was one thing neither of them said out loud. This would not be easy because somewhere in the city, Victor Kane was already moving, already adjusting, already planning his next step, and men like him didn't lose quietly. Later that evening, as the estate dimmed into silence once more, Amara stood alone in the study. The files lay open before her, the truth laid bare. She traced her fingers lightly across the edge of the desk, her thoughts steady, focused, sharp. She had almost married him, almost given him everything, almost walked willingly into a trap she would not have survived, but now she knew, and knowledge was power. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Declan stepped in. "You should rest," he said. Amara didn't turn. "Not yet." He walked closer, stopping just beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, "You're not afraid," he said. It wasn't a question. Amara finally turned to him, her expression calm, but her eyes different now. Stronger, colder, unbreakable. "I was," she said. Pause. Then, "I'm not anymore." Declan held her gaze, and in that moment he realized something important. Victor had made another mistake, because he hadn't just revealed himself. He had transformed her, and the woman standing in front of him now was not someone who would be controlled, not someone who would be broken, but someone who would fight and win. The day began too quietly. That was the first sign. No messages, no suspicious calls, no sudden business disruptions, no movement, nothing. After days of constant pressure, silence felt unnatural, like the air before a storm. Amara stood by the window in her study, arms folded, her eyes scanning the estate grounds below. Security moved in tight, coordinated patterns. Vehicles checked, gates reinforced. Everything looked controlled, but she didn't trust it. Not anymore. "Something's off," she said. Behind her, Declan leaned against the desk, watching her closely. "It's quiet," he agreed. "Too quiet." He nodded slowly. "That usually means one of two things." Amara turned to face him. "They're regrouping," she said. "Or they're already in position," Declan finished. Silence followed. Heavy. Understanding. "Cancel everything today," Declan added. Amara frowned slightly. "I already did." "Good." She studied him. "You think it's happening today?" Declan didn't soften it. "Yes." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara exhaled slowly. "Then we stay ready." By afternoon, the tension had settled into something almost suffocating. Every sound felt amplified. Every movement watched. Even the wind brushing through the trees carried an edge. Inside, the estate had shifted into lockdown mode. No unnecessary staff, no outside access, no movement without clearance. Still, it didn't feel like enough. "Maybe we should relocate you," Declan said, pacing slowly. Amara shook her head immediately. "No. Amara, if I run now, I lose control," she said firmly. "And that's exactly what he wants." Declan stopped, his eyes narrowing slightly. "This isn't about control anymore. It's about your safety." "It's both," she replied. And I'm not handing him either. Declan held her gaze. He wanted to argue, to push harder, but he saw it. That look in her eyes, steady, resolved, unmovable. So instead, he adjusted. Then we reinforce here, he said. Amara nodded. Good. Evening crept in slowly. The sky turned from gold to deep orange, then into shades of purple and black. Lights flickered on across the estate. Security doubled at every point. And still, that feeling lingered. Dinner was quiet. Neither of them had much of an appetite. They sat across from each other, the table set perfectly, untouched plates between them. You should eat, Declan said. You said that this morning. And I meant it then, too. A faint smile touched her lips, but it didn't last. After this is over, she said. Declan didn't respond because they both knew they didn't know when after would come. The first explosion shattered the night, came without warning. A deafening blast from the far end of the compound. The ground trembled, glass rattled violently. Amara froze. Declan was already on his feet. Stay behind me! Shouting erupted outside. Security alarms blared. Then, gunfire. Everything moved at once. Security personnel rushed across the grounds. Voices barked orders through radios. Lights flashed. Chaos. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. What was that? Amara demanded. Diversion, Declan said sharply. Or entry. Another explosion. Closer this time. The windows shook violently. Move. Declan grabbed her hand. They ran, down the hallway, through the corridor, toward the reinforced section of the house. Footsteps echoed around them, guards moving, doors locking, voices rising, perimeter breach, multiple entries, north side compromised. They're inside, Amara said. Declan didn't deny it. I know. Gunshots rang out again. Closer now, too close. Amara's heart pounded violently as they turned a corner, and suddenly a figure appeared ahead, armed, moving fast. Down! Declan pulled her sharply to the side as a shot rang out. The bullet hit the wall behind them. Plaster shattered. Amara gasped. Declan reacted instantly. He shoved her behind him, grabbing a nearby guard's weapon as the man moved past. Another shot. Declan fired back. The attacker dropped. Keep moving, Declan said. Amara nodded, her breath uneven but her mind focused. They ran again, faster now. The house that once felt safe now felt like a maze under attack. Every corner uncertain, every shadow dangerous. They reached a side exit. Out, Declan said. Where? Safer than here. They stepped outside, and the night exploded again. Gunfire erupted from the trees. Security returned fire. Lights flickered. Smoke filled the air. The scent of burning metal and gunpowder choked the atmosphere. Get to the car! Someone shouted. A vehicle screeched to a stop nearby. Declan pushed Amara toward it. Go! She ran, every step heavy, every breath sharp. She reached the car and then another explosion right beside them. The blast threw her off her feet. The world spun. Sound vanished into a ringing silence. Her body hit the ground hard. Pain shot through her side. Her vision blurred. Amara! Declan's voice, distant, panicked, not like before, not controlled. She tried to move. Her body didn't respond. Smoke filled her lungs. Her ears rang. Her chest burned. Strong hands pulled her up. Declan, his face tense, eyes wide. Stay with me, he said urgently. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Another shot rang out. Declan turned, shielding her instinctively, returning fire, moving, protecting. Get her out of here, someone shouted. The car door opened. Declan practically carried her inside. Drive, he barked. The car sped off. Everything blurred. Lights, sounds, voices, pain. Amara drifted in and out. Her head leaned against the seat, her breathing shallow, her vision fading. Declan held her hand tightly, too tightly. Stay with me, he said again, his voice breaking slightly. She felt it, that shift, that fear. I'm here, she tried to say, but it barely came out. Don't close your eyes, he said, but they were already heavy, too heavy. The last thing she saw was his face, close, desperate, then darkness. The hospital lights were too bright, too sharp, too real. Voices echoed, doctors, nurses, urgent, fast. "She's losing blood. Get her in now. Vitals dropping." Declan stood just outside the emergency room, still, silent, but barely holding it together. His hands were stained with her blood. He stared at them, unmoving. For the first time since this began, he wasn't thinking strategically. He wasn't calculating. He wasn't planning. He was afraid. Hours passed, or minutes, or something in between. Time lost meaning. Finally, the doors opened. A doctor stepped out. Declan moved instantly. "How is she?" The doctor paused. Then, "She's alive." Declan exhaled sharply, relief hitting hard. "But," the doctor continued, "it was close." The words settled heavily. "She's stable for now," he added, "but she needs time." Declan nodded slowly. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. The room was quiet. Machines beeped steadily, soft, rhythmic, alive. Amara lay still, too still. Declan stepped closer, carefully, like she might disappear if he moved too fast. He reached for her hand, gently this time. "You stayed," she whispered weakly. He froze, then looked at her. Her eyes were open, tired, but alive. "Always," he said, and in that moment, everything else faded, because the war outside, the danger, the chaos, none of it mattered as much as this. She was alive, and that was enough for now. But somewhere far from the hospital, Victor Kane stood in the shadows of his own world, watching, waiting, because to him, this wasn't over, not yet. The world returned in fragments, not all at once, not clearly, just pieces. A distant beeping, soft, rhythmic, persistent. Voices, muffled, overlapping, fading in and out like echoes underwater. Light, too bright, too sharp, forcing its way through heavy eyelids. And pain, dull, deep, everywhere. Amara drifted between awareness and darkness, caught in a space that didn't feel entirely real. Time had no shape here, no beginning, no end, just a constant pull between staying and letting go. Her vitals are stabilizing. A voice, distant, clinical. "She's responding." Another voice, closer this time. Amara tried to move. Her fingers twitched slightly, felt like lifting something impossibly heavy. "She's coming around." The words echoed, and with them, something inside her pushed forward. Her eyelids fluttered. The light hit immediately. Too much. She shut them again instinctively, her breathing uneven. "Amara," that voice. Different, not clinical, not distant, familiar. She tried again, slowly, carefully. Her eyes opened, blur, shapes, movement, then focus. The ceiling came into view first, white, still, unmoving. Then she turned her head slightly and saw him. Declan. He was sitting beside her bed, leaning forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. He looked different, not the composed, controlled man she had grown used to seeing over the past few days. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair slightly disheveled. There were faint shadows under his eyes, and his gaze was fixed on her like she might disappear again if he looked away. "You're awake." His voice was low, careful, almost disbelieving. Amara blinked slowly. Her throat felt dry, heavy, took effort to speak. "You stayed," she whispered. The words were barely audible, but he heard them. Declan let out a slow breath, something in his shoulders easing for the first time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I stayed." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't heavy, it wasn't tense, it was soft. Amara tried to shift slightly. Pain shot through her side. She winced. "Don't," Declan said immediately, straightening. "You're still recovering." "Feels like I got hit by a truck," she murmured faintly. A small, relieved huff of laughter escaped him. "Something like that." She studied him. Even through the haze of pain and exhaustion, she noticed things. The way his hand hovered slightly, like he wanted to help but wasn't sure if he should. The way his eyes searched her face, checking, confirming, reassuring himself that she was really awake, the way he hadn't left. "How long?" she asked. Declan understood immediately. 2 days, he said. Her brows drew together slightly. 2. Her voice faded. "You were in and out," he added gently. "Mostly out." She absorbed that. 2 days. Lost. Gone. Her gaze shifted slightly, taking in the room, the machines, the quiet. "It was bad," she said, not a question. Declan didn't lie. "Yes." Silence. Then, "You thought I wouldn't make it this time." He didn't answer immediately because the truth sat heavy in his chest. "Yes," he said finally. The honesty didn't scare her. It grounded her. She let out a slow breath, her eyes drifting closed briefly before opening again. "But I did." Declan nodded. "You did." And for a moment, they just looked at each other. Something had changed, not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably, because this wasn't the same as before. This wasn't just old friends reconnecting. This wasn't just allies in a fight. This was something deeper, something forged in fear, in uncertainty, in the space between life and death. "Did they catch him?" she asked quietly. Declan's expression shifted slightly. "Not yet," he said. Her eyes hardened just a fraction. "But they will," he added. She studied him. "You sound sure." "I am." There it was again. Momo was again, that certainty. But this time, it felt different. He wasn't just saying it to reassure her. He believed it. "Good," she said softly, because now this wasn't just about survival. It was about ending it. A nurse entered briefly, checking her vitals, adjusting the IV, offering a gentle smile before leaving again. The interruption was short, but it grounded the moment. "You should rest," Declan said after a while. Amara didn't argue. She was tired, deeply, but her mind wasn't ready to shut down again. "Stay," she said. It wasn't a command, not quite a request either, just a quiet truth. Declan didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes softened slightly, and this time when she closed them, it wasn't to escape, it was to rest. Hours passed. When Amara woke again, the light had shifted, softer now, warmer. Late afternoon. Declan was still there. Of course he was, but this time he wasn't watching her. He was asleep, slumped slightly in the chair, arms crossed loosely, head tilted just enough to show the exhaustion he had been holding back. Amara watched him quietly. This version of him, unaware, unfiltered, tired, real, it did something to her. Something quiet, something unexpected, because she realized something in that moment. He hadn't just stayed, he had waited through uncertainty, through fear, through the possibility of losing her, and he hadn't walked away. Her chest tightened slightly, not with pain, but with something else. Carefully, she shifted her hand just enough. Her fingers brushed against his. Declan stirred immediately. His eyes opened, alert, focused, then softened the moment he saw her awake. "Hey," he said. "Hey." A small pause. Then, "You were sleeping." "So were you." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Caught me." She studied him again. Then, "Why didn't you go home?" Declan leaned back slightly, stretching his neck. "Didn't feel right." "That's not an answer." He glanced at her, then away briefly, then back. "I told you," he said. "I'm not leaving you to go through this alone." Amara held his gaze. "You've done enough." Declan shook his head. "Not even close." There was something in his tone, not obligation, not duty, something more personal. "Declan." He looked at her, and for a moment the room felt smaller, quieter, more intimate. "You don't have to carry this with me," she said. Declan's expression didn't change. "I want to." The words landed softly, but deeply. Amara's breath caught slightly because that was different. Not "I have to," not "I should." "I want to." Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them were ready to say out loud. "You almost died," Declan said quietly. Amara didn't look away. "I know. And you're already thinking about what comes next. A small, tired smile touched her lips. You know me too well. Declan's gaze softened. Yeah, he said. I do. Another pause, then, we'll handle it, he added. Not you, we. And this time, she didn't question it. Okay, she said. That night, the hospital room dimmed into quiet. Machines continued their steady rhythm. The world outside kept moving, unaware, unchanged, but inside something had shifted, because the fear that had once threatened to consume her had changed. It had been replaced by something steadier, stronger, hope. And beside her, Declan sat quietly once more, not watching the door, not watching the world, just watching her. And for the first time since this all began, Amara didn't feel like she was fighting to survive. She felt like she was finally starting to live again. The city woke to another headline, but this time it wasn't speculation. It wasn't rumor. It wasn't whispered gossip passed between social circles and newsrooms hungry for scandal. This time it was truth, and it hit like thunder. Business tycoon Victor Kane arrested in connection with attempted murder. Lagos erupted. News stations scrambled. Social media exploded. Every platform carried the same image. Victor Kane, once polished and untouchable, being led away in handcuffs. No smile, no composure, no control. Just a man caught. Inside the hospital room, the television played the news on low volume. Amara watched silently. Her body was still recovering, but she had insisted on sitting up. She needed to see it, needed to witness it. Declan stood by the window, arms folded, his attention shifting between her and the screen. They moved faster than expected, she said quietly. Declan nodded. The attack changed everything, he replied. Before it was business interference, hard to pin down, but attempted murder, he exhaled slightly, that gave them what they needed. On the screen, a reporter spoke rapidly, barely containing her excitement. Sources confirmed that authorities have been investigating Mr. Kane for several days following a violent attack on billionaire heiress Amara Okoye, who is currently recovering. Amara muted the television. The room fell into a softer silence. It's not over, she said. Declan didn't argue. No, he agreed. It's not. Because arrests were one thing, convictions were another battle entirely. Later that afternoon, the hospital room filled with a different kind of energy. Legal, controlled, precise. 2 investigators and a legal representative stood near the foot of Amara's bed, files in hand, voices calm, professional. We'll need your statement, one of the investigators said. Amara nodded. You'll have it. Declan remained nearby, silent but present, not interfering, not speaking for her, just there. Can you walk us through what happened? The second investigator asked. And so she did, from the beginning. The engagement party, the hallway, the conversation she wasn't meant to hear, the words that shattered everything. Her voice didn't break, didn't falter, didn't shake. She spoke clearly, carefully, truthfully. Declan watched her closely, and something in his chest tightened, because this was strength. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady, unyielding. And the attack? The first investigator prompted. Amara's eyes flickered briefly, just once, then steadied again. They tried to box us in, she said. 2 vehicles, coordinated, armed. Did you recognize any of the attackers? No. But you believe Mr. Kane was responsible. It wasn't framed as a question, but Amara answered anyway. Yes. The word landed with quiet finality. The investigators exchanged a glance. Notes were written, details recorded. We have evidence supporting your claim, one of them said. Financial trails, communication logs, witnesses placing him in contact with known criminal elements. Amara nodded slowly. Declan's jaw tightened slightly because hearing it confirmed even more clearly just how close she had come to something far worse. We'll be proceeding with formal charges, the investigator continued. Attempted murder, conspiracy, financial crimes. Good, Amara said. The interruption was soft but firm. The investigator paused, then nodded. We'll keep you informed. And, just like that, they were gone. The room fell quiet again. Amara leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly. It's real now, she said. Declan stepped closer. "It's been real." She shook her head faintly. "No," she said. "Before it was something I was fighting." She looked at him. "Now it's something he's losing." The trial didn't take long to begin. The case was too public, too high profile, too explosive to delay. Within days, the courtroom became the center of attention. Media lined the entrance. Cameras flashed constantly. Every movement watched, every detail dissected. Amara wasn't supposed to attend. Her condition still required rest, recovery, distance from stress, but she went anyway. Declan didn't try to stop her. He knew better. "You're sure?" he asked quietly as they approached the courthouse. Amara nodded. "I need to see this through." Declan studied her for a moment, then opened the car door. "Then I'm right here." The courtroom was packed. Journalists, observers, whispers filling the air like static. And at the center, Victor Kane. He stood as they entered. His eyes found hers instantly, and for a moment, everything else faded, because there it was. Not charm, not confidence, not control, but something darker. Anger. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving. Amara didn't look away. Not this time. She held his gaze, steady, unmoved, and something in his expression shifted because he saw it. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. The proceedings began. Charges were read, evidence presented, witnesses called. One by one, the truth unfolded. Financial records, shell companies, blackmail transactions, connections to known enforcers, and then the attack footage, call logs, coordinates, everything aligned. Everything pointed back to him. Victor remained composed, mostly. But cracks began to show. Subtle, but there. His lawyer argued, deflected, attempted to dismantle the narrative. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed, too connected. At one point, Victor's gaze shifted back to Amara, and this time, there was no mask left. Just pure, undisguised fury. Declan noticed immediately. His posture shifted slightly, protective, alert. But Amara didn't move, didn't flinch. Because this was the moment everything had been leading to. When it was her turn to testify, the courtroom fell silent. Every eye on her, every breath held. She stood slowly, still healing, still recovering, but standing. And that alone spoke volumes. She took the stand. "State your name." "Amara Okoye." Her voice was clear, steady. "And your relation to the defendant?" A pause. Brief. "He was my fiancé." A ripple moved through the courtroom, but Amara didn't react. She told the story again. This time, not just as a victim, but as a witness to truth, to intent, to everything he had tried to do. And when she finished, there was no doubt left. The verdict came faster than anyone expected, because some truths didn't need time to be understood. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. "On the charge of attempted murder, guilty." A breath held, released. "On the charge of conspiracy, guilty." Murmurs, whispers, shock. "On the charges of financial crimes and coercion, guilty." Final, absolute. Victor Kane stood frozen, for the first time, truly frozen. Because this was something he couldn't control. He turned, looked at Amara one last time, but this time, there was nothing left. No power, no influence, no dominance. Just a man who had lost everything. Outside the courthouse, the world exploded again. Cameras, voices, questions. "Ms. Okoye, how do you feel? Do you have a statement? Was justice served?" Amara paused at the top of the steps. Declan stood beside her, waiting. She looked out at the crowd, at the noise, at the world that had watched everything unfold. Then she spoke. "Justice isn't about revenge," she said calmly. The crowd quieted slightly. "It's about truth," she continued. And today, the truth was heard. No drama, no angerer, just clarity. Then she turned and walked away. Later that evening, the city began to settle. The headlines had changed. The story had shifted. But inside the quiet of her home, Amara finally allowed herself to breathe. Not as someone under attack, not as someone surviving, but as someone who had endured and won. Declan stood nearby, watching her. "You did it," he said. Amara shook her head slightly. "We did it." And this time, when she said it, there was no hesitation, because she knew she hadn't faced it alone, and she never would again. For the first time in weeks, there was silence. Not the tense, watchful silence of fear, not the heavy quiet of uncertainty, but something softer, something steadier. Peace. Morning light filtered gently through the tall windows of the Okoye estate, casting warm, golden patterns across the marble floors. The air felt lighter, as if the house itself had finally exhaled after holding its breath for far too long. Amara stood on the balcony outside her room, wrapped in a soft robe, a cup of tea cradled between her hands. The city stretched out before her, alive, unchanged. Cars moved, people walked, life continued. And for the first time since everything began, she didn't feel like she was standing outside of it. She felt like she was finally stepping back into it. Her body was still healing, was. The faint ache in her side reminded her of that every time she moved too quickly. The scars, both visible and not, were still fresh. But she was stronger. Not just physically. Something inside her had shifted, settled, hardened in some places, softened in others. Behind her, the door opened quietly. She didn't need to turn. She already knew who it was. "You're up early," Declan said. His voice carried that same calm steadiness she had come to rely on. Amara took a slow sip of her tea. "So are you." Declan stepped out onto the balcony, closing the door gently behind him. He leaned lightly against the railing beside her, his presence familiar now, no longer something new or uncertain, just there. "I had a call with your legal team," he said. "Final asset reviews, contract restorations, everything is moving back into place." Amara nodded. "I expected as much." He glanced at her. "You don't sound surprised." She gave a faint smile. "I built those systems carefully. They were shaken, not broken." Declan studied her for a moment. "That's a very you way of looking at it." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "And what does that mean?" "It means," he said lightly, "you don't panic, you adapt." A small pause, then, "Even when most people would fall apart." Amara looked out at the city again. "I came close," she said quietly. Declan didn't interrupt, didn't correct her, just listened. "There were moments, she continued, when I wasn't thinking about strategy or control or anything, really." Her voice softened. "Just survival." Declan's gaze shifted slightly. "And now," she turned to look at him, "now I don't want to live like that anymore." The words hung between them, simple but deeply honest. Declan nodded slowly. "You don't have to." There was something in the way he said it, not reassuring, not comforting, certain. Amara held his gaze for a moment longer, then looked away again, her fingers tightening slightly around the cup. "I've been thinking," she said. "That's always dangerous." A small laugh escaped her. "You're not wrong." She set the cup down on the railing. "I don't want things to go back to exactly how they were before." Declan frowned slightly. "Because of what happened?" "Because of what I've realized," she corrected. He waited, giving her space to continue. "I built my life around control," she said. "Every decision, every partnership, every relationship." Her eyes darkened slightly. "And I almost let the wrong person take advantage of that." Declan shook his head. "You trusted someone you shouldn't have," he said. "That's not the same as weakness." Amara met his gaze. It felt like weakness. A brief silence followed. Then Declan spoke again. "You know what I see," he said. She raised an eyebrow slightly. "What?" "I see someone who was strong enough to walk away before it was too late." The words landed deeper than she expected. Amara looked at him quietly, because he didn't say it like a compliment. He said it like a fact, and for some reason that made it easier to believe. The rest of the day unfolded slowly. For the first time in a long time, Amara wasn't reacting. She was choosing. Meetings were scheduled, not rushed. Calls were made, not forced. Decisions were taken, not pressured. Her company began to stabilize. Partners returned cautiously. Contracts were renegotiated. Trust was rebuilt, piece by piece. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And this time, it was hers. By evening, the estate felt alive again, not with chaos, not with tension, but with something quieter, something warmer. Amara found herself in the garden, walking slowly along the path, her steps measured but steady. The air was cool, the sky painted in soft shades of orange and blue. Declan joined her without announcement. He had a way of doing that. "You've been quiet," he said. "I've been thinking. Still dangerous." She smiled faintly. They walked in silence for a while, not uncomfortable, not forced, just easy. Then Amara stopped. Declan paused beside her. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated, just for a moment, then turned to face him fully. "Why do you do this?" Declan blinked slightly. "Do what?" "All of it," she said. "Staying, helping, being here." Her voice softened. "You don't have to." Declan studied her longer this time. Then he exhaled slowly. "I know I don't," he said. Pause. "But I want to." There it was again. Not obligation, not responsibility. Choice. Amara's breath caught slightly. "You keep saying that," she said quietly. "Because it's true." Another pause. "Then why?" she asked again. This time Declan didn't look away. "Because I care about you." The word settled between them. Simple, but not light. Amara felt something shift in her chest. Not sudden, not overwhelming, but undeniable. "Declan." He shook his head slightly. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I'm not trying to make this complicated." His voice softened. "I just don't want to pretend it's not there." Silence followed. But this time it wasn't uncertain. It was clear. Amara looked at him, really looked. Not just as the man who had helped her, not just as the one who had stayed, but as someone who had always been there, even when she hadn't noticed. "You've changed," she said softly. Declan gave a small shrug. "So have you." She nodded. "Yes," she admitted. A faint smile touched her lips. "I think I like this version better." Declan's expression softened. "Me too." The air between them shifted, not dramatically, not suddenly, but enough. Enough to feel it, enough to know it. Something was growing. Not rushed, not forced, but real. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked quietly. Declan raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She held his gaze. "Back then." He understood immediately. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You had your whole world ahead of you," he said. "I wasn't about to complicate it." Amara tilted her head slightly. "And now?" Declan's gaze didn't waver. "Now you're standing right in front of me," he said. Her breath caught. "Because that felt different. Not like the past, not like something missed, but like something found." They stood there for a moment longer. Close, not touching, but aware. Then Amara exhaled softly. "Everything feels different," she said. Declan nodded. "It is." She looked at him. "And that's not a bad thing." He smiled slightly. "No," he said, "it's not." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in soft twilight, they remained there, not rushing, not forcing, just allowing. Because for the first time, neither of them was running from what they felt, and neither of them was afraid of what might come next. They were simply moving forward, together. Love didn't arrive like a storm. It didn't crash into Amara's life with overwhelming force or demand to be noticed. It didn't rush, didn't overwhelm, didn't consume. Instead, it settled quietly, steadily, like something that had always been there, just waiting to be seen. Days passed, then weeks, and for the first time in what felt like forever, life began to feel normal. Not the old version of normal, not the controlled, calculated routine she had once lived by, but something softer, something real. The estate no longer felt like a fortress. Security was still present, but no longer suffocating. The tension had eased, the fear had faded, and in its place there was space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to feel. Amara found herself spending more time outside, in the garden, on the balcony, walking without purpose, thinking without pressure, living without constantly looking over her shoulder. And somehow Declan was always there, not hovering, not imposing, just present. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, sharing nothing but the moment itself. And that was new, because Amara had spent most of her life surrounded by noise, expectations, decisions, power. But this quiet connection, it was something she hadn't realized she needed. One evening, as the sun dipped low across the sky, painting everything in warm gold, Amara sat on the steps leading into the garden, barefoot, relaxed, her hair loose, her posture unguarded. Declan approached slowly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been out here for a while," he said, handing her one. She accepted it with a faint smile. "I like it here." He sat beside her, not too close, not distant either. "I can see why," he said. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping their drinks. Then, "You're different," Declan said. Amara glanced at him. "Again with that?" He smiled slightly. "I mean it this time." She raised an eyebrow. "And what does this version of me look like?" Declan thought for a moment. Then, "Lighter," he said. The word caught her off guard. "Lighter?" she repeated. He nodded. "Like you're not carrying everything on your shoulders anymore." Amara looked down at her hands. For a moment she said nothing. Then, "Maybe I'm not," she admitted. Declan watched her. "And maybe," she continued, "I finally understand that I don't have to." He smiled softly. "About time." She nudged him lightly with her shoulder. "Careful." He chuckled. The ease between them had grown naturally, unforced, unspoken, but underneath it there was something more, something both of them felt, but neither of them had fully stepped into yet. That changed one night. It was late. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that came when the world had settled and everything felt still. Amara couldn't sleep. She found herself walking through the halls, her steps slow, thoughtful, until she reached the study. The door was slightly open, light spilling through. She pushed it gently. Declan was inside, sitting at the desk, working. Of course he was. "You ever sleep?" she asked lightly. He glanced up, a faint smile forming. "Occasionally." She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. Declan leaned back slightly. "Want to talk about it?" Amara hesitated. Then, "Yes." She moved closer, sitting on the edge of the desk. For a moment she didn't know where to start. Then, "I keep thinking about everything that happened," she said. Declan's expression softened. "That makes sense." "It's not fear," she added quickly. "Not anymore." He waited. "It's realization." She looked at him. "How close I came to losing everything," she said. "My company, my freedom, my life." Declan's jaw tightened slightly. And how easily it could have gone differently. Silence followed. "Then you didn't let it," Declan said. Amara shook her head slightly. "I almost did." He met her gaze. "But you didn't." The words were firm, grounded, and for some reason they settled something inside her. She exhaled slowly. "Then there's something else." Declan straightened slightly. "What is it?" Amara hesitated. This was harder. Not because she didn't know what she felt, but because saying it made it real. "I don't want to go back to who I was before," she said quietly. Declan frowned slightly. "You don't have to." "I know," she said. She looked at him. "And I don't want to go forward alone either." The words hung in the air, clear, honest, unavoidable. Declan stilled. For a moment he didn't speak, because this mattered. "Amara." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking for something perfect," she said, "or easy, or even certain." Her voice softened. "I'm just asking for something real." Silence. Then Declan stood, slowly, carefully. He stepped closer, close enough now that the space between them felt intentional. "I don't do temporary," he said quietly. Amara's breath caught slightly. "I don't do halfway either." His voice was steady, but there was something deeper underneath it. If I'm here, he continued, it's because I'm all in. Her heart skipped. And if I choose you, he added, it's not going to be something I walk away from. The words, because they weren't light. They were a promise. Amara searched his face, looking for hesitation, doubt, uncertainty. She found none. Only truth, only clarity. Then don't, she said softly. Declan didn't hesitate. I won't. And that was it. No grand declaration, no dramatic moment, just two people choosing each other. Fully. The space between them disappeared. Not rushed, not sudden, just natural. Declan reached for her hand. Amara didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, simple, but meaningful. Then slowly he leaned closer, giving her time, giving her space. Amara closed the distance, and when their lips met, it wasn't explosive. It was soft, steady, certain, like everything they had built between them. When they pulled back, nothing felt uncertain anymore. No questions, no hesitation, just clarity. You're sure? Declan asked quietly. Amara smiled faintly. For the first time in a long time, she said. Yes. And just like that, love wasn't something they were circling around anymore. It was something they had stepped into, fully, together. Later that night, as the world slept quietly around them, Amara lay in bed, her thoughts calm, her heart steady, not racing, not questioning, just certain. Because this time, she wasn't choosing out of expectation, or pressure, or illusion. She was choosing because she wanted to. And beside her, Declan slept peacefully, not as someone passing through her life, but as someone who had chosen to stay, and would. The morning felt different, not louder, not brighter, not more extravagant, just lighter. Sunlight poured gently through the tall windows of Amara's room, soft and golden, settling across the cream-colored walls like a quiet blessing. The air carried the faint scent of fresh flowers, white roses and lilies, arranged carefully throughout the house. Everything was beautiful, but nothing felt overwhelming. Nothing felt forced. Amara stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her. This time, she didn't feel like she was looking at a stranger. Her gown was elegant, but not excessive. Flowing, graceful, simple in a way that spoke louder than extravagance ever could. It wasn't designed to impress the world. It was chosen because it felt like her. Her hair fell softly around her shoulders, styled but not rigid. Her makeup enhanced, not masked. Everything about her felt natural, authentic. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said. Serena stepped in first, followed by a few close friends and trusted family members. Gone were the crowds, gone were the overwhelming guest lists, gone were the people who came for status instead of love. Today, only the people who mattered were here. Serena stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening slightly. "Amara." Amara turned. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, "You look," Serena started, then paused. Amara raised an eyebrow lightly. "Different," Serena smiled. "Happy." The word landed softly, but deeply. Amara held her gaze, then nodded. "I am." And this time, it wasn't something she was trying to convince herself of. It was true. Across the estate, in a smaller, quieter room, Declan stood adjusting his cufflinks. His suit was sharp, perfectly tailored, but he wasn't thinking about how he looked. He was thinking about her. Everything that had led to this moment, every step, every decision, every second that could have gone differently, but didn't. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," he said. His friend Marcus stepped in, grinning. "Didn't think I'd see the day," he teased. Declan smirked slightly. "Which part?" "You getting married?" Marcus replied. "Or you actually looking nervous about it?" Declan paused, then exhaled lightly. "I'm not nervous," he said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Declan shook his head. "I'm just aware." "Of what?" Declan met his gaze. "Of how much this matters." Marcus's expression softened. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That sounds more like you." The ceremony was set in the garden, the same place where quiet conversations had been shared, where healing had begun, where something real had taken root. Rows of chairs lined the space, simple and elegant. White flowers decorated the aisle. Soft music filled the air. Nothing was excessive, nothing was staged, everything was intentional. Guests took their seats, conversations quieted, the atmosphere shifted. And then the music changed. Declan stood at the front, his posture steady, his expression calm. But his eyes searched. And then she appeared. Amara walking down the aisle, not as a symbol, not as an heiress, not as someone fulfilling expectations, but as herself. Every step she took felt grounded, certain, unshaken. Her eyes met Declan's, and in that moment, everything else faded. No past, no pain, no fear, just this. He smiled softly. She smiled back. And just like that, the distance between them felt smaller. Step by step, she moved closer until she was standing in front of him, and for a moment they said nothing, because words weren't necessary. Everything they had been through, everything they had become, was already understood. The officiant began. Simple words, meaningful, not rushed, not overly formal, just honest. Marriage, he said, is not built on perfection. It is built on choice. Amara's fingers intertwined with Declan's. On showing up, he continued, even when it's difficult. Declan's grip tightened slightly. On truth, on trust, on love that stays. A quiet breath moved through the gathering. Then it was time. "Do you, Declan, take Amara?" "I do," he said. No hesitation, no pause, just certainty. Amara's breath caught slightly, not because she was unsure, but because she felt it. The weight, the meaning. "Do you, Amara, take Declan?" She looked at him, really looked, at the man who had stood beside her when everything fell apart, who had protected her, supported her, chosen her without hesitation. "Yes," she said softly, and then, stronger, "I do." The rings were exchanged, simple, elegant, meaningful, not symbols of possession, but of partnership, of equality, of choice. "You may kiss." Declan didn't wait for the sentence to finish. He stepped forward, and this time the kiss wasn't uncertain. It wasn't new. It was sure, steady, like everything they had built together. Applause filled the garden, laughter, joy, warmth, but for them it felt quiet, centered, right. Later, as the celebration continued softly around them, Amara stood with Declan slightly away from the crowd. The sky had shifted into soft twilight. Lights glowed gently around the garden. She leaned slightly against him, comfortable, at ease. "This feels different," she said. Declan glanced at her. "Better?" he asked. She smiled. "Real." He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "It is." A pause. Then, "You know," Amara added, "the first time I stood in a room like this, I thought I had everything figured out." Declan looked at her. "And now?" She met his gaze. "Now I know the difference between what looks right and what is right." Declan smiled softly. "And which one is this?" Amara didn't hesitate. "This," she said, "is right." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they had been through, of everything they had chosen, of everything they had become. As the night deepened and the celebration carried on, one truth stood quietly at the center of it all. She had walked away from something that would have destroyed her, and in doing so, she had found something that would build her. Not just love, but the right kind of love. The kind that doesn't take. The kind that stays forever.